Alright everybody, welcome to the channel. Today I'm going to do a video on what I consider to be toxic information on Kundalini. So there's a lot of great information out there on the internet about Kundalini awakenings, especially now. 10 years ago when my Kundalini first awoke, there wasn't quite so much, but there was still some good stuff. But there's also some misinformation and even disinformation about Kundalini awakenings, and I'm just going to touch on a few of those today, because the thing is, when you are having a full Kundalini awakening and the energy is permanently on in your body, you're going to go through a period of trauma, immense trauma potentially, where all this pain and emotional issues and everything's being cleared out. You might be very bewildered and not really know what's going on at all. So you're going to be, searching on the internet or reading books, obviously more commonly on the internet probably these days, to find out information, to try and piece together what on earth is going on in your life and in your body with this Kundalini process. And when you're in a very emotionally open state like that, any information that you consume is going to be embedded deeper in like the subconscious than it might normally be. This is essentially how things like trauma-based mind control work. I'm not going to get into that on this video, but when people are in a much more emotionally open state like that, things can get embedded really deeply. So it's important what information you consume, and these four things that I consider toxic, I just want to share my view on these to try and put people's mind at ease if they've read any of this information, and also just to kind of call it out in a certain way. So the first piece of information is the idea that the only way Kundalini energy should be awoken is through a guru. And this is an idea propagated by some people who are followers of Eastern religion, and also some people in the New Age. And the idea is that the only right way to awaken Kundalini is by sitting at a guru's feet essentially and having them pass the energy on to you. Now, this is ridiculous in my opinion. Like the idea that, now I'm not saying that this path is ridiculous for some people. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just meaning that the idea that that's the only way it should be awoken that's what I'm saying is ridiculous. The Kundalini energy is going to awaken in you when you are ready. So like you can't force this process. You can't fool God. You can't, like a flower is going to come up from the ground and blossom in its own time when it's ready. You can't like pull it up and force the petals open. This is a natural process. This is a natural unfolding of divine energy into the human body, and it happens when you're ready. So you don't think you've done anything bad or that this is premature or wrong. I read a comment, I saw a quote the other day that I shared it on Twitter, and I really liked it. It's like, if God brings you to it, God will bring you through it. And so this process happens when you are ready. You don't need a middleman to connect with God, source, however you refer to it. You don't need a middleman to activate this energy. It activates at the right time for you. And even if you are going to go through all sorts of trauma and trials and troubles with the process, that's because that's your path and you're ready to walk it, and you're ready to deal with that. You're only going to be given what you can deal with. And it's not like, it's funny because I even think like I would use the phrase spontaneous Kundalini awakening to describe my awakening process, but in a certain way, even saying spontaneous Kundalini awakening, it's kind of fraught with the limitations of language, because it's not really spontaneous. There's all these causal streams that have been flowing in this lifetime and countless lifetimes before to get your soul to a point where this certain emergence occurs. So it's not spontaneous at all, really. But I guess just with the limits of language, it kind of gets the point across that you weren't really preparing in a certain way for this process, and it just kind of happened. So that's the first one. I'm not discounting a path of a student, a guru, or anything like that. I'm just saying, don't buy this idea that that is the only way or how it should be done. There's no hows, there's no right or wrong ways. This path is guided by divine intelligence, and it awakens in you when you're ready, not before. And you can't force it, you can't fool God, you know. So yeah. So the second piece of information, and this it's very similar in a certain way, this is, and that is that if you've been experimenting with plant medicines or psychedelics prior to your awakening, then somehow you have done something wrong or forced this, or it's unnatural. You might come across that, like people saying it's unnatural. This was particularly relevant for me because I'd spent the 2 years prior to my awakening, I'd done quite a lot of plant medicine journeys with psilocybin mushrooms, magic mushrooms, and I'd also done a high-dose mushroom trip, which I've spoken about in another video, 7 months prior to my Kundalini awakening. So yeah, when the awakening happens and like you're in this whole turmoil, if you're then going online and thinking, finding information that people are saying, it's you've forced it or you've done something, this can be detrimental and dangerous information to consume in a certain way. If your path was to do the psychedelic medicines, then that was your path, and that's exactly how it was meant to be. They were your initiator, perhaps, or your kind of guru, so to speak, on this journey. And I found, personally speaking, the high-dose mushroom trip that I did was a very initiatory experience for me, and it also gave me great strength through the early years of my Kundalini, where it was very distressful. And to draw upon that experience, it gave me a deeper understanding of some of the altered states of consciousness that I would experience during the Kundalini awakening. So it was a very powerful and helpful event on my life path. And yeah, I feel it was like a certain initiation that I had to go through in this lifetime before the Kundalini, before like a next layer of the initiation. So yeah, don't buy into that. From my perspective, these plants are natural. These are natural medicines. They're part of nature. They're part of the biosphere. They're not unnatural. It's like you wouldn't consider doing some kind of dietary cleanse through certain plants unnatural. These are just extremely powerful medicines. So yeah. Yeah, I just wanted to put that one out there because I don't want people like feeling like they've done something wrong. No, that's just not the case. So the third point is, and I'm just going to touch on this one briefly. There's a lot that could be said about this, but I just want to pick up on one little specific issue. This one's especially relevant for men because you will find a lot of information out there that's talking about masturbation, especially for men, and ejaculation. And yeah, this is a really big topic, but some information I came across was literally saying that you shouldn't ejaculate at all during a Kundalini awakening, or if you want a Kundalini awakening, and even going as far as saying it would abort the Kundalini process. And this is really dangerous information to put out there. Now, I'm not saying that you should be ejaculating all the time or masturbating all the time, but there may be periods during the Kundalini awakening where you do need to do that and express that energy. It's about getting in tune with what the energy needs to do in your body. That's really the key to it. And so, yeah, don't attach guilt to sexuality in any way. There are shadow expressions of sexuality, sure. And if you are like obsessively masturbating or watching porn and things like that, then that's something you're going to have to deal with on your Kundalini awakening. But also, like, you know, allow this process to do what it needs to do. I spent many months, I've gone through many month periods of not masturbating, and I think that was what I needed to do at that point in the journey. But then you just come to a equilibrium, and I'm not like, you know, I think semen retention and things like that is very important on this path to a point. But also to completely not ejaculate is unhealthy. You know, someone of my age, like 37, you know, maybe like once a month or something like that is a good kind of level. But you'll find as you get more in tune with your body, more in tune with your sexuality, as this process goes on, it'll become just like a natural thing you get into, and you'll understand, and you'll start to feel, oh, okay, I've felt an energetic drop here and things like that by say masturbating too frequently or something like that. So it's just about finding balance. But my main reason for bringing this up is I know that me reading that information early on in that open state did inject some additional, like, guilt and fear about sexuality. And yeah, that's just something you want to avoid, really. And there's enough guilt laid on sexuality in this society without bringing extra guilt in that way. Um, there's some valid information about this kind of stuff, but just lose the fear and judgment of sexuality and Kundalini. It's not going to abort the Kundalini process, put it that way. The last one I'm going to mention, the last sort of piece of toxic information, and this is the kind of the big one in a certain way. You'll see this everywhere when you're searching on the internet, and that is the idea that Kundalini is somehow demonic. That is the most toxic, ridiculous piece of information that is put out there. And the people who are propagating this usually are people coming from a Christian worldview, like a fundamentalist Christian worldview. And you know, the discerning mind can see that for what it is. The projection of fear, like, onto something that they don't understand, like they're projecting like this, oh, it's demonic, we don't, because it's a foreign concept to them in a certain way, which is kind of ironic, really, considering that the Bible is absolutely full of references to Kundalini awakenings, and also, you know, like the deeper layer, like one of the occulted layers of the Bible is all about Kundalini awakenings, especially or the Book of Revelations and things like that. And I think this is disinformation. In fact, not everybody who's propagating that, it's not disinformation on the level of everybody propagating that, but I think the higher levels of the priestly class, say like the Catholic Church and things like that, they know about this energy. So it's kind of ironic and a little bit sad that people who follow that faith believe Kundalini to be demonic. And also, you know, Moses had a Kundalini awakening, Jesus had a Kundalini awakening. I mean, the whole idea of the Christ, Christ is essentially a title given to that Christ consciousness energy, or the awakening of the Christ within, the rising the Christos, up through the 33 vertebrae in the spine into the Holy Land. I mean, the Bible's full of these not so subtle, if you've got the eyes to see, references to Kundalini awakenings. But even though this, when I was reading this kind of stuff early on, yeah, I was obviously just dismissing it. But even still, as I sort of stressed a couple of times in this video, when you're in that state of open kind of fear and panic and all this crazy things going on in your life, they can get embedded in, even though your intellectual mind is just dismissing that. These things can get embedded into the subconscious, and so you want to be careful about that. And you know, I'm sure love to anybody who is saying it's demonic. I'm not attacking them for saying that. I think they're misguided, and I think they're purposefully manipulated by the priestly class to only perceive a base level understanding of their holy book and not see the deeper mystical truths in it. I guess this, if you are coming from a religious background, say you were brought up in a very strong religious background, and you have a Kundalini awakening, then this could be a much more serious point for you, and not so easy to dismiss if you've got all those layers of religious belief structures around this. So yeah, just get into your heart, feel this energy, feel what it feels like. Come out of the mind. Try not to intellectualize it too much. Like, what does this energy feel like? Does it feel demonic? No, of course not. It feels like pure love energy, pure bliss. And that's, I don't mean you're in bliss all the time. It's working through trauma. It's bringing up darkness. It's bringing up shadow. It's clearing demonic energies in a sense that maybe are feeding on your energetic body, or yeah, things like that. It's just feel what it is. Don't give in to intellectual fears about what this is. Trust yourself, trust what feels right for you, and trust the process. Trust it, and that's the way through it. So yeah, okay. I'll leave that there. I just wanted to call out some of these ideas that I think can be potentially damaging emotionally to people when they're searching for information to try and make sense of their own process. So I hope that was helpful for some people, and I'll see you in the next video. Okay, peace.